So, what if the leaders we see, dominating our political stage, what if they aren't really leading at all?
That's a provocative place to start.
It is, and today we're diving into a perspective that asks exactly that. We're looking at Larken Rose's article, Trump versus Biden, the Pathology of Leadership and the Delusion of Followers.
Yeah, it's definitely a searing analysis.
Mhm.
Doesn't pull any punches.
Not at all. Think of this deep dive as your sort of shortcut to understanding his critique. The main arguments, the examples he uses. Some are pretty uncomfortable.
We'll pull out the key insights for you. And yeah, some of his takes are real head turners.
So where do they even begin? It's not just about Trump or Biden initially, is it?
No, that's what's interesting. He steps back first. He wants to define, or maybe redefine, what we even mean by leadership in the political sphere.
Okay, so how does he define it?
Yeah.
Or not define it?
Well, he draws this really sharp line. On one side, you have what he calls actual leadership, identifying a problem, finding a solution, and getting people to willingly follow you to fix it.
Yeah.
Cooperative.
Right, makes sense. And the other side, political leadership.
That, for Rose, is, well, it's fundamentally different.
Right.
He sees it as basically violent dominance, just dressed up nicely.
Violent dominance, that's strong.
It is. He argues it's less about solving things together and more about maintaining power over people using the threat of force, essentially the state's power.
And this leads him to a pretty critical view of politicians themselves.
Extremely critical. He uses the term parasite.
Parasites, wow.
Yeah. Exploiting, in his view, our natural human tendency to look for leaders to follow.
And he has that quote, right? Something about...
It's not about righteousness.
Yeah.
It's about the state violently dominating people. That quote really frames his whole perspective.
It definitely sets a bleak tone, this idea of politicians as parasites.
Yeah.
It really implies a deep skepticism about the state itself, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It seems rooted in a belief in, individual autonomy, first and foremost. He views the state structure as inherently coercive.
So anyone working within that system is participating in coercion.
That seems to be his logic, yeah.
Yeah.
They're living off the actions and productivity of individuals rather than genuinely serving them.
Okay, so with that framework, kind of a cynical one, how does he analyze Joe Biden?
Well, applying that lens, his take on Biden is, as you said earlier, pretty brutal.
Yeah.
He calls him a demented, corrupt shell of a man. And he doesn't just focus on recent concerns. He mentions a history of alleged corruption.
Mm-hmm.
But interestingly, his critique isn't just aimed at Biden the individual.
Right, it extends to his supporters, too.
Very much so. He argues the Democratic voters because of what he calls tribalistic political fear.
That our side versus their side stuff.
Exactly. He claims they deliberately overlooked what he saw as obvious flaws or problems with Biden.
So it's about group loyalty, kind of overriding critical thinking.
That's the dynamic he's pointing to. Loyalty to the party makes it hard, maybe impossible, to honestly assess your own leader. He calls it a kind of collective denial.
And he uses that really striking image.
The crumpled puppet lying in a theater.
Yeah, still getting applause, even though, in his view, the leader is clearly compromised. It depicts this refusal to see reality.
It's a harsh image. So if that's Biden through Rose's lens, how does Trump fare? Does the critique change?
Oh, it definitely doesn't soften. If anything, it intensifies.
Really? How so?
He throws labels like pathological liar, narcissist, and unstable man-child at Trump. Just a constant stream of negative descriptions.
So more assertive maybe, but equally flawed in Rose's view.
Or maybe more so. He argues Trump is utterly devoid of principle or plan.
Yeah.
Right? It's all about ego, all about self-image and power for its own sake.
Even the Make America Great Again slogan.
He dismisses it, calls it meaningless jargon, even idiot noise.
Idiot noise.
Wow.
Yeah, he kind of lumps it in with other political slogans he sees as empty, like hope and change.
And again, the focus isn't solely on the leader.
No, he again criticizes the followers. He portrays Trump supporters as willfully delusional.
Meaning they choose to ignore reality.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Clinging to an image of Trump that Rose believes just isn't real, because in his view, Trump only serves himself.
Okay, but he doesn't just make these big claims, right? He uses specific examples.
He does. He tries to ground the criticism. The MS-13 tattoo incident is one he highlights.
Right, I remember reading about that. Can you recap that and his interpretation?
Sure. So the story goes that Trump showed a photo, apparently with MS-13, kind of photoshopped onto some gang tattoos, but claimed it was really part of the tattoo.
Okay. A factual error, maybe?
Well, for Rose, it's way more than that. He sees it as proof of Trump's inability to ever admit being wrong. even about small things.
And the implication is bigger than just being stubborn.
Yeah. Rose argues that this, combined with a supposed climate of fear where staff won't correct him, points towards something dangerous. An authoritarian dynamic. He actually compares it to environments in places like North Korea or Nazi Germany.
That's a heavy comparison.
It is, where the leader is always right and dissent isn't tolerated.
Okay, what's another example he uses? Something about tariffs and Amazon.
Right. This was about Amazon apparently suggesting they might list import tariffs separately on receipts, for transparency.
Which sounds reasonable enough. Rose supports transparency, right?
He does. But he slams Trump's reaction. He saw it as Trump trying to bully Jeff Bezos just for suggesting showing customers how government policy impacts prices.
So what's the bigger point Rose is making there?
He uses it as more evidence of what he calls Trump's authoritarian tendencies and also this victim complex he perceives.
Victim complex.
Yeah, like Trump complaining when the effects of his own policies are pointed out. Rose uses this analogy of a thief whining when someone notices they're stealing.
So again, it's less about the policy itself, more about the character revealed by the reaction.
Exactly. The psychology, the motivations behind the actions, that's his focus.
Then the article goes into that list, the broken promises. It's quite extensive.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, you could almost say broken promises are standard political fare, but Rose definitely doesn't see it that way.
How does he frame it?
Well, the list includes things like auditing Fort Knox, getting rid of income tax, abolishing the Department of Education.
Auditing the CIA, the Epstein files.
Right, all those things that didn't happen. That most transparent administration ever line about the Epstein files comes across as pretty sarcastic in the article.
And Rose has a very specific, very critical reason why he thinks these promises were broken.
He doesn't hold back. There's that quote. He relies on his supporters being stupid enough to make excuses when he doesn't follow through.
Ouch. So he's accusing Trump of deliberately lying.
Essentially, yes. Making promises he knew he couldn't or wouldn't keep, things he maybe didn't even have the authority to do, portraying him as a con artist, basically.
Preying on people's hopes.
That's the implication. Preying on frustration and hope.
But then, maybe the most challenging part of the whole analysis is when he turns the spotlight fully away from the leaders.
And onto the followers.
Yeah.
What's his core argument there?
This is really central for him. He argues that the fact that people continue to support leaders like Trump and Biden, despite what he lays out as obvious glaring flaws, that fact itself points to something being wrong, something broken in the psyche of the people, as he puts it.
So the problem isn't just the leaders, it's the electorate.
That's his uncomfortable conclusion, that the continued support reveals a deeper issue within society itself.
And he ends with a pretty direct challenge to those supporters.
Very direct. The closing quote is aimed right at them. If you're still cheering for a narcissistic, delusional child as your leader, maybe grow the up.
Yeah, very blunt. No ambiguity there.
None at all. It's confrontational.
So summing it all up, Rose is painting this picture of, failed leadership on both sides, driven by flawed individuals. Right. But it's more than just critiquing individuals. It's a critique of the whole system of political leadership as he sees it.
And crucially, a critique of the followership that enables it.
Exactly. A harsh look at the leaders and an equally harsh look at what he views as the partisan, maybe delusional psychology of their supporters.
It really leaves you, the listener, with a tough question, doesn't it? What does the kind of support these leaders get, regardless of party, tell us about our collective values?
Or our priorities as a society.
Yeah. And it forces you to think about your own choices. Why do we follow who we follow? What are we really looking for in a leader?
Definitely food for thought. And look, this discussion, it's really just skimmed the surface of Rose's arguments in the article of the video he made.
Right. There's a lot more detail and nuance in the original source.
Absolutely. So if this conversation got you thinking, and you want to grapple with his full perspective, the specific examples, the full context,
We definitely recommend checking it out for yourself.
yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes. It's certainly thought-provoking. Maybe uncomfortable, but definitely gets you thinking about leadership today.